I have an amazing guest today who's actually a good friend as well. And I mean, I'm not sure if you really need an introduction, Christine, but I'm going to do
No,
it
please,
anyway.
it ages me. Now I'm going the other way.
An author of two books, Clear Boundaries and Wise Eyes, 30 years in the mortgage finance industry. And I have an infinite amount of respect for you, Christine, because you kind of, through your career, have made a switch and kind of got out of the mortgage industry and went into coaching and started your own coaching business. And it's a great indicator and reminder that you can do anything you want if you're passionate about it. And that's why I love you so much, because you put so much passion in everything you do. So without further ado, I want to welcome Christine Beckwith.
Yay! It's so nice to see everyone. And my Annie Mac alma mater over there, Sean Yoakum and Jesse Swagger. I can't say enough. That's my home team right there. So yes, I hung up my jersey, so to speak, a couple years ago after playing some hard ball for 30 years and went after my passion in coaching. And and I spend my days now helping professionals and teaching lessons and have built a big curriculum system and just really living in my purpose. So it's a journey to find your way there. If you're not 50 yet, check back in with me when you turn 50, because stuff starts happening when you get that age where you realize you really want to be purpose filled and you want to have what you desire to help people create a legacy and that sort of thing. So yeah, writing books and out there speaking on the circuit.
I'm knocking on that door, so when I get there, I'll let you know.
Yeah, please, I'll let you in.
There's two things I really want to talk about today. One being empowerment, right? And I'll let you get into that in a bit.
Yeah.
And then two, having an infinite mindset in the sense that, we've had pandemics in the past, we've had tragedies in the past. And the one thing that is really clear to me is that things will get better. Things always get better. There's pain along the way. Yes, there's tragedy along the way, but things will get better. Will things be the same as they were before? No, they won't be. And the people that are adapting right now and overcoming are the ones that are saying, hey, you know what? We have to wear face masks. We have to wear gloves. We can't show homes in Pennsylvania, but we're going to do virtual showings. We're going to do virtual presentations, and we're going to overcome, and we're going to adapt, and we're going to do this. And those are the people that are doing really well right now. Instead of sticking your head in the sand and saying, oh my God, how are we going to get through this? What are we going to do? How long is this going to last? Right? It's two different mindsets. And if you could just touch on that and what you're coaching to people right now.
Yeah. So we teach a philosophy in the realm of positive spectrum that's really interesting. And I'll share with you guys some of the tactics. But just to acknowledge what you just said, that is absolutely true. Like, I think the biggest challenge we all have right now in the environments that we're in is we have a big physical change in our movement. We're not going to the gym the way that we were. We're not having the activity that we were. And, of course, we can look around and find all those people that are, getting up and finding ways to be physical. And of course, we know what the right answers are. Doing it's another thing. I think having a positive mindset in uncertainty is really difficult because we don't have all the answers. So, economically, there's a lot of puzzle pieces that need to come back in. And when this is done, there's going to be missing puzzle pieces in our economy. Like, it's not, the picture's not all going back the way that it was. I think for me personally, having survived 07, 08, and I know it sounds like everybody's grandfather's story of walking uphill both ways, barefoot in the snow. I always say, if you didn't have an economic crisis story, then now you've got a doozy, because this one pretty much trumps, no pun intended, all of the other doozies that we've had. So, I think it is a mindset. And so I want to share with you something about the positive mindset spectrum that's scientific, which will help you really understand how you can control some of the mindset pieces. There is a study in a class I teach from a Dr. Barbara L. Fredericks. If you ever look her up on YouTube, you'll find tons of lectures that she's done. She's famous because she set out to prove what happens to a person's life when they live in what we call the positive mindset spectrum. And so for a moment, I want you to kind of picture like a bell curve in front of you, and right down the middle, you cut it in half. And on one side of that bell curve is all negative emotions, and on the other side is all positive emotions. Now, I want you to understand, in life, we aren't really waking up any given day and picking the negative emotional spectrum to live in. We're not saying, okay, I hope I have a bad day today. We're all waking up with great intentions, but our life is dictating to us where we fall. And interestingly, we can be in both spectrums throughout a day multiple times. So, not to make any jokes, but we can literally 1 hour be in the negative spectrum and 1 hour be in the positive spectrum. So let me describe a little further, because I think you'll have an aha moment when we get into this. It's really exciting to me. I learn the study and I teach the study in an actual class, and I actually certify in the power of positive mindset, which is really neat today. And so this left spectrum is all things that make you feel negative or hurt. So let's call it sadness, anger, anxiousness, frustration. It could be brought on by divorce. It could be brought on by financial strain. It could be brought on by stress at work, sadness. Illness can make you get pulled into the negative mind spectrum. And so what Barbara L. Fredericks did is she did a study in the Northern Carolina University, and she took hundreds of students, and for a full year, she subjected groups of students to negative atmospheres. She controlled their eating, their exercise, their atmosphere. She planted negative people in. And then over here, she had study groups that were in positive mindset. These people had a whole different life. They woke up every day and they read positive mantras to one another. They exercised. They ate a healthy diet. They were high activity, and they planted positive people in there that they didn't know weren't part of the study, but were just people that were, always glasses half full people. While over here in the negative spectrum, they had the complainers and the moaners. After a year, her study began at the end of that case, where for the next 10 years, she actually followed the people that had been in those studies' mindsets and what the health and business attributes were. And so what she discovered is two things that are now called the broaden and build spectrum. So this is really interesting, because if you are feeling something negative, she has discovered through all the studies, there's only two ways you can react. Humans only react in two ways. We may react in 100 ways, but under the umbrella description of these two ways, and that is fight or flight. So what's interesting is if you ever feel like you want to fight in a situation, or you feel like running away, you're living in the negative spectrum in that moment. So you'll never, after leaving this podcast this morning, not recognize that you're in the negative mindset spectrum when you feel like fighting or you feel like running away. And so she said, you can't control the negative spectrum, in that we're never going to control the things that make us feel negative emotions. We can't completely stop the bad things from happening. For instance, pandemic has happened to us, not because of us. And so we're living in a spectrum where we want to run away from it, right? We want to fight against what it represents. What she discovered in the positive mindset is that if you are in the broaden and build mindset, you are living in a positive mindset. So here's an interesting thing in life. If you are doing home improvements right now at your house, or baking a lot, or cooking, or sewing things, or painting, or journaling, or writing, if you have a coach, for instance, what are the things? If you want to go work out, if you are coming on a podcast at 8 a.m. to drink your coffee and listen to some stranger that you don't know, that's the inner system is telling you, I want to broaden and build my mindset. And so the end of the study speaks to people's decisions that we make to help ourselves stay in that positive spectrum. So while we can't stop ourselves from the fear and anguish and sadness and all these things that are going to pull us into the negative, what we can do is we can try to pull ourselves back over to the positive side. We can counter the negative pull by exercise. We can get up and move. If we're having a really bad day, we can take a 30-minute break and go for a walk, because the activity begins to pull us back to the other side. And so what I want to tell you is, I live a life after learning this many years ago, where I read, write, talk, exercise, and do all these things, where I try to stay in this broaden and build mindset. And I'm going to tell you what's happened for my life since I've learned this is I have been building and broadening my life at like major percentages more than before I learned that tactic. So I hope that kind of helps you in this time to think about, like, what are the things you can do stuck in pandemic that will help you live over here in that positive mindset.
That's phenomenal. And you know, the one thing that I just got out of that is the question you have to ask yourself: are you running towards pain, or are you running towards pleasure?
Yeah.
You know, and I live my life kind of the same way as you, Christine, in regards to journaling, exercise, reading, getting my mind right. I'm a huge proponent of affirmations and making sure that you start the day with the right positive mindset. So I love that.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll tell you also, you know, I'm not one of those coaches that pretends the world is perfect. You know, my expectation with people that I work with is not perfection. And it's not that, I will be honest with you, I've had days, of course, like everybody, where despite all efforts to move myself to a positive mindset, I've had a failure. I've had days like that in the last year where I just had a bad day and I kept trying to get over here and couldn't. And so, you know, one of the things that we do, one of the things I will tell you to do is, if you can't get out of that mindset, remember this: when you're in a fight or flight mode, if you're stuck there, you will do the greatest amount of damage to your life and your business in that mindset. Because if you're walking around ready to argue, or you're ready to run away and someone's trying to keep you in your place, there's no other thing that you're going to do than like destroy things around you, whether that's verbally or whatever. So, you know, when I have days where I can't self-correct because of whatever, I've had some, you know, days where I had the flu. And on those days I found I couldn't self-correct. And that was because I was sick and my body just didn't want me to correct. And so when that happens, I put myself in a timeout. So a little cheat for you is, don't feel like you're failing if you try to do that and it doesn't work on any given day for one reason or another. Putting yourself in a business timeout, like, you know, clearing your calendar for the day, might seem anti-productive. And as a coach, we don't want to have many of those days. We don't want professionals to have a lot of those days. But if that protects your business and you from damage you might otherwise cause when you're not in the proper EQ, it's actually a really smart thing to do. So, yeah.
Great advice. So what are your thoughts on empowering people? I know you had something you wanted to share.
Yeah.
As well.
So we're a big believer, I just said, on reading. And one of the things, if you can all see this and shake your head if it just came up, yes.
Yep.
Great. So what you're looking at right now is a Harvard University Business School article. I actually was brought into this study and did a day in Atlantic City, really fun day, with 17 other senior executives. And we did nothing else for 6 hours but talk about this study behind closed doors in a conference room. Because what had happened is we had discovered the number one deterrent to business growth is the inability to scale. And the number one deterrent to scaling is the inability to empower other professionals to do a great job with delegation. So, you know, this is where I would love this to be a little interactive so that you're not just hearing me talk at you, but by all means chat, you know, the answers as I ask you rhetorical questions. I just want to see what your answers are. But let's start with a chat question right now where I ask you, are you good at delegating? Do you think right now at the beginning of this exercise, or not? Just say yes or no. If you feel like adding any words, you can, but it's fun to just see what everybody thinks they are or are not. It'll be good for Chris to see too, what everybody thinks that's on the line. So, you know, delegation's a trick and it takes a lot to be able to do empowerment type of exercises. So for a minute, what I want you to know is that you have, I want you to take yourself to a place where this was written by Stephen Covey. So Stephen Covey, interestingly, has written so many famous lessons. And so he's never been a book, author. He's always done these incredible lessons that companies use. He's become famous for it. So he wrote this article, which, by the way, we've given to Chris. So if you want a copy of it, his team can give you a copy of this. And it basically goes into what happens when we are not willing to hand something off to the next person. So for a moment, I want you to think, we're going to imagine that you have some reports that you want to delegate. You're pulling them right now, you're reviewing them, but you know that somebody else on your team could easily pull these reports and review them and hand you summaries and help you with this part. Let's pretend that's the job. If you're literally, I'm going to take you into a scenario where you can kind of analogically imagine this world of delegation. So you have this reporting job, you're going down the hallway, you're going to Susie's office, and you're going to tell Susie, I need you to pull these 4 reports on Thursday, and I need you to look at them, summarize them, and hand them out to the team. So on your way to Susie's office to tell her that you're going to do this, you and her begin to have a conversation because you run into her in the hallway, and she basically tells you that she's so busy and she can barely get anything done. And what ends up happening as you're hearing this discussion is she doesn't have time for what you're going to give her. That's one reason why you might not delegate. In another scenario, and we played all these scenarios out, we imagined a world where we begin to tell ourselves a few narratives. So I would love to see you. Only one person chatted, by the way. That's not acceptable. I need you all to grab your chat.
That's unacceptable. Yep.
and participate with me. The delegation button, the delegation situation is such where if you think you're the only person that can do something well or fast or maybe the best, you're not willing to give it. So you wait, you hold it, and you don't give away things. So here's what happens. Everything that you're doing in life is like a monkey on your back. So if I were to come to you and I were to count how many monkeys Chris Stevens has on his back with the workload, like I literally said, Chris, I want you to write down every project that you do, every task that you do. God knows how long that would take him in the world that he's living in. But if he wrote it all down and then he handed it to me as a coach, and I then looked at it and then I gave it back to him and I said, okay, I want you to tell me how many of these monkeys you're carrying on your back that other people could do the work for. And I want you to try to assign a name of a person within your work area who could do the work. So this exercise becomes a little bit easy because we are able to say typically who could do the work. We know in our minds people capable of doing the work. So when you write all that down, and I will tell you this, if you ever do this delegation exercise and you list all the things you do and then try to assign other people to them completely, you have to go into a place that isn't normal. You have to pretend I'm going to take you and I'm going to send you to a foreign country and your business needs to run on its own. So think about how scary this is. I'm going to take Chris Stevens and I'm bringing him to Italy for a month. And I say, KW's got to run without you doing anything for 30 days. Who are the people you would lead? Now, doesn't that change what I just said? Because the first exercise was, who do you think could do the work? So your mindset is going to already tell you scary things like, well, I think she could do this task or he could do this task. It might require some training. We begin to go through this narrative. In a life or death or emergent situation, now look at the pandemic. If in January we had a fire drill for the pandemic and they said, everyone needs to pretend you have to work from home and you can't move throughout the country, all the stores are closed down and everything, we'd be like, yeah, right. Okay, in what world would that ever happen, right? Number one, we can't even imagine that world. And number two, it's like every bad sci-fi movie we've ever had. Well, I'm going to tell you, the businesses that are doing well, back to the beginning of our conversation with Chris at the top of the hour, is that the people that are doing well in this atmosphere are the same people that are good at emergent leadership. They're good at you know what, we're in a crisis and I'm the EMT. Like, I'm the first to arrive on the scene of the accident. I know what to do. I know whose lives need saving. Running your businesses are the same way. Empowerment, is about doing this. So I want to share with you that in 2001, I was a branch manager, and I should say 1997, I was a branch manager with 10 LOs. And during the course of 1997 to 2007, so a 10-year period, I went from managing 10 loan officers to 900 loan officers. I went from being a branch manager to managing 210 branch managers, 14 district managers, 6 regionals, and 900 loan officers. We also grew during that 10-year period. And so when people say to me, how did I keep my sanity levels, and how do you get to that level where every step of the way you are delegating work? You have to learn to empower. One of the things that you have to tell yourself is you are willing to put this monkey on somebody else's back, knowing they could drop the monkey. Now, this is really scary, because I have had to delegate things and watch people make mistakes with the things I did perfectly and fast and well, and take them and fail in some instances at doing the project, or worse, have diminishing returns. So business tells you don't do that, because we don't want to take a step back. But empowerment tells you you can't go forward till you step back. So the difference between going forward on your own, we control what's within our scope. But where we get into a place where we're scaling is you can't get to the next level till you are willing to go and understand that for you to take the next level up. A great example is I started this coaching company with just me. I wrote a 5-year business plan, and I started a company with me and a couple of people. And I knew that in the first year I would hire 12 people, and in the second year I'd hire 20 more. And I knew that I would go from me as a master coach to 6 coaches to 12 coaches. Well, I'm at the point right now where we're at 9 coaches. So at some point, I had to take people that I was coaching, that I felt I had fixed their businesses and done what they needed to do, and hand them to another coach. That process is a delicate process. You're talking about handing people's businesses over to another person on your team that may or may not do what you're doing. So, I think I'm getting my point across, is that this article is going to tell you that often we try to delegate, but we end up with the monkey back on our back because we're afraid to let it go. We're afraid for those things. Here's what you need to know. Would you be willing to hand the monkey you have over to somebody else, even though it might take a step back, even though it might not get the same results with you doing something? If when you stepped back and you watched that project maybe do a little worse, that you were there to re-guide them, have a meeting, train them, show them what's missing, knowing that maybe over a period of 2-3 months, they'll get up to speed to where you are because they need time to get there. Are you willing to make a 90-day investment in teaching to delegate that project so that you can advance? Because the hours that you earn back when you empower allows you to build at levels and manage your business at levels that allow you to scale and go to the next level. When I took my entire operation in the last 6 months from me coaching, if you can imagine, 120 hours a month, to having 9 people coaching and a change, I'm able to, this year we have 26 employees now. Right? And so what that allowed me to do is interviews, and it allowed me to train, and it allowed me to go to the next level. So my question is, where is your business not growing? Because you're unable to bring these people that you need to take these steps with, the step back to delegate and the slower steps to teach, so that you can move forward and have the ability to get these things back. That's a very high level. The who is working for whom part is interesting, because a lot of times as leaders, we are working for our people, but we literally need to understand that this type of delegation, getting rid of your monkeys, the tactics that it takes, really is the difference. And here's the thing. When you get rid of all your monkeys, you're making time for gorillas. And so what happens in this article that you're going to get and read is you're going to learn what makes people super, super successful, is that the giants in business understand that in order to do this, in order to get to that process, you have to be able to delegate and you have to be able to trust that process to scale. Does that resonate,
Christine,
Chris?
oh my God, this is such good information. And the one thing when you start talking about it is by doing this exercise, it uncovers or unleashes the type of talent that you have. So the question is, do you have A+ players on your team? And if you don't, right, then you need the top grade. It kind of shows you or gives you an indication of where you have holes in your organization. And if you don't have holes and you have A+ players on your team, you're able to leverage that and you're able to move on and do other things. And case in point, we've partnered with, I think Kevin's still on the call, with Kevin to expand our territory into King of Prussia. And we would never be able to do that if we didn't have the right people on our leadership team, right? So I think I'll use that as an example.
Yeah. Congratulations. I saw that on Facebook last night, by the way. That's so exciting. And I love to see you grow. And you're a tremendous leader. Listen, these tactics were things that took time for me to even learn. I wanted to do everything. There were steps along the way that are hard. It's not easy. I have one employee right now who's growing with us and is doing so many things and not delegating well. And so I use this person as an example, remain nameless. This person just knows that they do it faster and do it better. And I completely appreciate that, and is not wanting to let me down by handing it over to people we've hired to support this person. And we've said, I've had to have the talk where I've said, look, if the quality slightly goes down and the time frame lengthens, but in the interim, you're right there helping and teaching and helping and teaching. In 90 to 120 days, that speed's going to come back up. And your hours that you're going to get from this delegation to these other 4 people we've hired is going to allow you to take other things off of my desk that allows us to do more sales and allows us to do, the next step. I have to constantly, here's the other side of this. I have to, and it's such a pun for my company, but, your vision for success. I have to create that vision. I do a lecture called the V Factor, and this lecture is about, if we ever get out of here, Chris, I will come and do this lecture for your group live at your office in one of your sessions. It's called the V.
You just concreted that right there. You're coming. So.
Oh, I would love that. Believe me, give me an excuse to please get the hell out of here. But yeah, no. There's 3 things I'll leave you with, because I know we're trying to do this in 30 minutes, right?
Hey, Christine, do I have your permission to maybe go like 5 minutes, a little bit longer, just because
I have all the way till 9. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. I was just going to say the V factor for 3 points I would leave you with is that I believe there are 3 major things that allow us to be successful: your vision, your vitality, and your velocity. And so what's interesting about those in the pandemic is that we need the vision more than we ever have. So what is vision? Vision's about seeing the horizon and stabilizing and moving towards that horizon. So, I don't know how many people on here are boating people, but if you've ever been on a boat that's like really rocking, and believe me, I feel like our industry is exactly in the boat that's rocking, or in the storm with many boats rocking. How you stabilize and get your sea legs is you look to the horizon. They tell you, because it's the stable point in your view. And that's true for us right now in this pandemic. We have to know where to look to stabilize our viewpoint. Like, we're rocking in a boat right now. So where's your vision? And so there's so many analogies I could use with that. Vitality is your health. If you feel like mentally you're slipping, or you feel like physically you're slipping, and God knows I'm saying this as a hypocrite because I've eaten like 3 cakes since I've been in pandemic. So I'm just starting there. You have to really work at that part. And then finally, the velocity. They always say nobody won a race because they were slow. Like, there's never awards and ribbons and trophies given out for that. Velocity is not about necessarily how fast you go. It's about understanding the distance between point A and point B. So I'll finish with this notion for you. People that are successful, everybody at the beginning of the year has New Year's resolutions. and most people write a plan. And so a lot of people think they're winning as soon as they set goals and they write the plan. The truth is, those people are still not going to, in March, April, and May, execute on that plan. And the difference is this. If you understand your why, comes back to Simon Sinek's fame last year, and so true and uncovered and so simple. If you know why you're trying to diet to lose 20 pounds, and you really spend time working on the emotional piece, how bad you feel when you get dressed, how you weren't happy the last wedding you went to in the black dress, whatever it is that really emotionally is moving you towards a goal and a plan, in March or April, you will still remember that emotional piece. It doesn't matter if you have a weigh-in or a plan. The plan isn't going to make you show up. It's the emotional piece that makes you do it. When you get sick and tired of doing something, or you want something bad enough, when you look at all of the famous athletes, all of the great stories. I just watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. I wanted to come up off my couch. Like, I was literally like, yes, right?
Just talked about it yesterday in my team meeting.
How did you feel when Tiger Woods won his last Masters?
Just like unbelievable.
I was up on my feet because it's
unbelievable.
It's an emotional journey. It's an emotional story. So what I would tell all of you guys is, what is your emotion? Look at yourselves emotionally. My tagline for my company is emotional awakening through education. That's my tagline for a banking consulting firm. Where does that belong? Well, I can tell you it belongs in the stories of every person working in banking, because it's our stories that make us succeed. So
absolutely. I have no words. You always amaze me. And we do have some questions.
Great.
And Alexa, would you mind starting off the first question?
Sure. So the first question is from Kevin Toll. And he said, what is your process of finding talent, and how do you determine when a coworker is not delegating quickly enough?
Okay. So my process of finding talent is I run with the wolves mentality. Like, I want to be elbow to elbow. Like, I am friends with my competition. So, one of the greatest ways to compete is to do so with fun and loving. I can remember at 22 years old going out with my rate sheet to all my realtors' offices and running into the same LOs that were also out there with their product flyers. And I just made jokes with them like, hey, we should commute together. Ha ha. They were my competition, but I felt that way. When I became a coach in November of 2018, I ran an ad, full page ad in 8 of the major industry magazines. And it said, ready or not, here I come. And it just literally was like, all right, to my competition, here I come. So one of the things you have to do is introduce yourself to the competition, and you have to find the athletes in your business that are doing really well. And so I've never hated on those guys that were number one guys. I have been like, hey, at the conferences, what are you doing? Because you are, even if you're playing, I'm Red Sox, you're the Yankees. Listen to me. The day that Derek Jeter stepped onto the Fenway Field for the last time ever coming to Boston, I cried. You don't know the respect you have for your competition. I think there's 3 layers of competition, 3 layers of finding the top people. And I think it starts with, if you can earn the respect of your competition, then you're doing something right. That's the 3rd layer of competition. And so I just think you got to find who those people are and get close to them. I have recruited top producers over long periods of time, because you're reeling in a whale. And that takes time to get in the boat. It's not going to happen overnight. So that's number 1. What was the second part, Anna? Alexa?
He said, and how do you determine when a coworker is not delegating quickly enough?
Yeah, I mean, usually if somebody's getting bogged down in what you're assigning and they're not able to take on more, or there's quality issues or speed issues, understanding what we need to put out. I'm worried right now running my company about where I need to be in April of 2021. I'm thinking a year out. I'm always thinking a year out. If I know I want to have 25 coaches, you have to reverse engineer your year, because I'm not going to get to 25 coaches in April of 2021 unless I'm interviewing in June of 2020. And I'm starting to put those pieces into play. So what I would tell you is, for every leader that's managing somebody, you have to have a set of metrics that makes you understand if they're hitting the mark. So, you know, we have something called planning and accountability worksheets here. And so for everybody that coaches with us, they put in their income goals, their volume goals, their forward metrics, which is their activity goals, credit pulls, submissions. In your case, you know, if it's listings, it's caravans, not right now. It's, you know, FISBOs, it's all those things. And when you have a number assigned to it and you quantify your actions, you have to do a true up at the end of every month. You know, Harvard University put a study out that says 25 to 40%, the graduating class of 1974 MBA did a voluntary exercise of forecasting what their wealth would be in 20 years. The 94 class dissected that and discovered, because it was a voluntary exercise, only 13% of the class participated, but that 13% represented greater than 80% of the overall class's wealth 20 years later. And what they discovered is that when you anchor your activities with metrics that you measure, so these 13% knew, they said they'd be worth X in 20 years. So everything that happened to them, the same stuff, by the way, that happened to the rest of the class, death, divorce, illness, disruption, they recovered faster because they knew somebody was coming in 20 years to look at what they were worth, and they needed to get to that finish line. So, you know, you have to have weigh-ins. Why do people hire coaches? Not because I have a coach. You know, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room. I just know that the philosophy of coaching is I'm going to get on the scale with you. If you want to be a boxer, I'm going to get on the scale with you. And I'm going to tell you, like, okay, like, this ain't the weight we need to be at, right? So, you know, what do we need to do? It's that philosophy.
Love it. Alexa, is there another question on there?
Yep. So the next question is from Corey, and he said, at what point in business is it time to delegate? Is there a specific point that you tell your coaching clients to hire your first admin employee, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think that needs to be defined by your organization, your branch, maybe even your, you know, your brand. Knowing Keller Williams brand, I know there's a lot there resource-wise that probably gives you some idea. I think that delegation, when do they need to delegate, is when they're, you know, if you know the mark is X amount of homes sold a month, and then they can afford to get an assistant, that's one facet of delegation. Like, they've reached a point where they can afford it. I think there's a capacity calculation that has to occur. So I think that you have to decide, where does the average person in Keller Williams need an assistant? And there's two mindsets about delegation and growth with adding assistants. Some companies will have you, you know, at the point where you absolutely have to have a person helping you to get to the next level, and they'll know what that mark is. And then some companies will actually want you to be over that mark. So in other words, like in the mortgage world, when we have a processor that gets to 25 files, we know she needs an assistant or he needs an assistant. Some companies will say, well, when they get to 40 files, then we'll hire someone. But the distance between 25 and 40 might be that person being really unhappy, overworked, and ready to quit. So you have to decide, where does that stress point occur? And is it in line? Because you also have to be careful of anomalies. If you have a person who's exhausted at 15 files, but all the rest of the team are carrying 25, well, you got a singular problem. But so you've got to figure out what that stress point is. You have to know that your company agrees. So there's several things in scalability: affordability, stress factors, you know, the marks of delineation where that occurs. Once you determine that point, it's very easy to repeat. When I built 210 branches, I knew exactly how many people to start with and at what points to add people based on a set of metrics that we hit. And, you know, it wasn't exact. Sometimes people could do more or less in those metric spectrums, but it was a really good guide for multiplying.
That is awesome. And can you share that link, or maybe send it to me, that article,
Yep.
so I can email it to everyone? Awesome.
Yep, I'll email it to you the moment I get off.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for being on the call. I know we went over, and I really appreciate your time, because I know you're super busy. And this was an absolute amazing call. I don't know about all of you, but I got a ton out of it, and really appreciate you.
Yay. And I'm going to give a plug for my Annie Mac guys. I have to. You know, I work with dozens and dozens of companies in this country. And I worked at Annie Mac for 13 years. I helped build Annie Mac. I had the first branch outside of the main organization. There were 2 teams that had 30 people, and I had 52 loan officers in Boston when I met Joe Penabianco, the CEO of Annie Mac. And I'm going to tell you, he came at a perfect time in my life. I had just gotten done closing that large operation I just described to you. And I went on this 13-year journey to build this company that was filled with culture and really good people. And I know Chris knows Joe, and I know there's a reason there's Annie Mac people in his branch. But I would tell you, if you are not yet using them, please, they didn't ask me to say this, but I just have to tell you, you've got great people. I know Sean and Jesse personally. Anyways, it's good to have good guys in your ship, and you've got some good guys in your ship. So that's all I'm going to say. And anyways, I love you all. Take care. Reach out to me. Please follow me on Facebook. I have 2 groups. I have 20/20 Vision for Success Coaching Facebook group. I have a page. So find the group, ask to join membership, because we put a ton of great information out there that you can use for your businesses, and a great community of people. And I have a group called Women with Vision for professional women in our space. And that's also a Facebook group. So hope to see you guys over there.
You're awesome. Thanks, Christine.
Bye, everyone.